No one ever thought this could happen in America. But today, in the wealthiest nation on earth, millions of families are going to sleep with empty stomachs. One apple split between 3 children. 1 in 3 children in Washington, D.C. doesn't get enough to eat. Entire villages survive on expired food flown in twice a month. And in West Virginia, elders dig through supermarket dumpsters for bruised fruit. Not in a war zone, not in a developing nation. Right here on American soil. From San Francisco's tech towers to the storm-swept villages of Alaska, food insecurity is no longer a distant fear, it is an unfolding disaster. This video uncovers the 10 states where the right to eat is slipping away. This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. Number 1. California. Imagine living in one of the richest cities in the whole world, and for the first time in your life, your dinner will be smaller tonight, because your favorite one now costs more than your hourly wage. It is happening in the richest city in the country. 24% of San Francisco residents now face food insecurity, according to the San Francisco Moraine Food Bank. In 2025, a gallon of milk in San Francisco now averages $9, bread $6.50. Basic fruits and vegetables, lettuce, tomatoes, even onions are disappearing from lower-income neighborhoods due to disrupted imports, extreme weather in California's Central Valley, and surging transportation costs. The consequences ripple across the city. In Bayview, corner markets have reduced hours or shut down entirely. In Tenderloin, food banks report an increase of over 30% in first-time visitors. School districts have quietly expanded free breakfast and weekend meal programs. Long-standing corner stores that served working neighborhoods have shuttered. One by one, families walk longer, spend more, and bring home less. And for many, even that less now feels out of reach. A retired maintenance worker in the Mission District said he used to stock up on canned beans and tuna each week. Now he waits for discount bins to open and chooses whichever box
Born
is
into
cheapest,
eternal
even if it's
darkness,
something he doesn't
Stevie
like.
Wonder became
I
one
just
of
tell
the
myself
brightest
it's food,
icons of modern
he
music.
said.
He didn't just
Eyes
play music,
downcast.
he lived
But I
in
miss
it,
the
breathed
days when I
through
could actually
melodies,
decide. These quiet sacrifices play out at kitchen tables across the city. Parents pretend they're full so children can have seconds. Seniors nibble slowly to stretch a plate into 2 meals. In a city famed for invention, survival now means surrendering control over something as simple, as human, as what to eat at the end of the day. And while one part of San Francisco discusses new food trends and gourmet alternatives, another side counts coins for a bag of white rice. The divide doesn't shout. It whispers through empty lunchboxes, skipped meals, and the quiet ache of wanting more than instant noodles. Not everyone feels this shift the same way. Some still eat well without worry. Others no longer speak of what to cook, but what's left. Is this still a food shortage crisis, or is it something bigger, deeper, that's slowly stealing people's right to dinner? Number 2, Texas.
Used each note to paint a world he had never seen with his eyes.
Brownsville was
From a
once
blind
a symbol
child
of
clutching a
hardworking
harmonica
resilience.
in a
But
small
in 2025, the resilience is being tested beyond its limit. Over 30% of residents live below the poverty line. 4 out of 10 families report going multiple days each month without food. Prices have climbed more than 40% in just 2 years, and wages here among the lowest in Texas remain painfully stagnant. Behind closed doors, people make impossible choices, gas or groceries. For many, control over their daily meals has quietly vanished. At the local food bank, the number of meals distributed jumped from $55,000 to $130,000 per month, an overwhelming surge that still does not meet the need. Teachers now bring extra bread for students who skip breakfast. A janitor working nights at a warehouse eats once per day to make sure his kids do not go hungry. Even nurses, even clerks, are skipping meals. These are not fringe cases. They are the new working poor caught in a dinner table crisis where food anxiety creeps in silently and never leaves. And yet, in wealthier cities just a few hours north, supermarkets are overstocked and farm-to-table restaurants offer seasonal menus for $75 a plate. The distance between those who eat by choice and those who eat by chance has never felt so wide or so quiet. Is this the new American hunger, not declared, but deeply felt,
in Detroit,
visible
to a
in every
legend with
weary
25
face in the
Grammy
checkout
Awards,
line?
hundreds
Brownsville
of millions
forces us
of
to
records
ask if
sold,
even the communities who grow our food cannot feed themselves. What exactly are we calling success? And as we leave Texas, the question lingers. If this is what life looks like in a place of harvest, what will we find next? In a state where even the shelves begin to disappear. Number 3, Iowa. What if the hands that feed a nation could no longer feed themselves? In Iowa, the land rolls with endless rows of corn. But behind that familiar postcard lies a truth most Americans never imagined: the farmers are going hungry. In 2025, over 1 in 5 small farms in Iowa faces the brink of collapse. Production costs, especially for fertilizer, have surged nearly 20% due to new tariffs and global shortages. But farmers do not set prices. Corporations do. While supermarket shelves display 40% price hikes, the people who grow that food are seeing less than ever. At local food pantries in Polk County, farmers quietly pick up boxes of expired canned goods. Children in rural schools rely on free meals more than ever. Some districts report a 67% rise in applications for food assistance. Teachers tell of kids hiding hunger with jokes, pretending to forget lunch just to avoid embarrassment.
In Detroit,
this
to
is
a
not just
legend
about
with 25 Grammy
bad
Awards,
seasons.
hundreds of
Quiet
millions
dinner
of
table
records
crisis
sold,
is unfolding in the very heart of America. And it is not just farmers. When they fall, entire rural economies fall with them. Truck drivers lose routes. Grocery clerks lose hours. Families move away. Main Street shutters its windows, and all the while, quarterly profits for food conglomerates keep rising. While one America sips $15 smoothies in city cafes, another America stands barefoot in a barn, wondering how to stretch a can of beans for dinner. If small farms continue to vanish, the backbone of American agriculture will fracture. And what disappears will not just be crops, it will be a promise that hard work could protect you from hunger. Iowa reminds us a nation is not measured by how much it produces, but by whether its producers can live with dignity. And as we leave the cornfields behind, the soil still fertile, but the spirit bruised. We are left asking if the seed planters must now beg for food. Who will stay to plant for tomorrow? Number 4, Missouri. What does it mean when the center of a city goes hungry while the suburbs dine in comfort? Kansas City was once proud of its identity. Fresh produce stalls, weekend markets, rows of tomatoes and sweet corn, the kind of place where food brought neighborhoods together. But in 2025, that image is slipping fast. Over 60 areas in the city have now been designated as food deserts, places where residents must travel more than a mile just to find fresh vegetables. And for many here, a mile might as well be 100. Walmart has closed. Save-A-Lot has packed up. Major grocery stores say profits are too low in poor neighborhoods, and they leave behind empty buildings and empty shelves. What remains are overpriced corner shops, where a box of instant noodles costs more than a pound of apples, and where apples are never even sold.
$1
A
mansions,
woman in East Kansas
luxurious
City
cars,
recently said
and
she's
a
eaten
private
instant
life
noodles for
filled with
7
emotional
days straight.
highs and lows. His
I know
life
it's not
is
healthy,
a thrill.
she admitted. But what else can I do? I don't drive. There's no grocery store left. No one comes here anymore. Without a personal car, just getting groceries becomes an all-day journey. Public buses come rarely and don't run directly to stores. Now you spend half a day changing buses and waiting in lines just to buy a single bunch of greens at triple the price it once cost. Seniors live on sodium-heavy canned goods and instant soup. Chronic illnesses like hypertension and diabetes are rising not because of excess, but because of nutritional poverty, and all this unfolds while just 20 minutes away. In the leafy suburbs, people still have fine dinner. The map now speaks in silence those who have access to food, and those who have access to nothing. Is this invisible rationing not handed down by policy, but enforced by infrastructure, by disinvestment, by the quiet decisions of powerful retailers who leave without a second glance? What's left behind are people making impossible choices in a system that no longer even tries to pretend it is fair. Missouri isn't losing food, it's losing connection. A city cannot call itself thriving if fullness exists only in the suburbs. If food is no longer a right, but a privilege drawn along zip codes, then what does justice even mean? And as we move from Kansas City to the next state, the question sharpens. Because if a place once proud of feeding others can no longer feed its own, how far has America drifted from its promise? 5. Washington, D.C., Are you surprised that even in the city that shapes the nation's laws, there are still children who have to go to sleep with an empty stomach? Washington, D.C.,
complete and deeply inspiring symphony.
Home to the nation's
Just how
most influential
miraculous
policies,
is Stevie
now
Wonder's
watches
life?
as nearly
What
one
enabled
in
him to
3
transform?
residents struggles to eat. Behind the televised debates, a quieter crisis spreads in places like Ward 7 and 8, where nearly 85,000 people share just 3 grocery stores. This is not a recent oversight. It is a wound left open for decades. Mothers here work 60 hours a week, ride 3 buses to get to minimum wage jobs, and still cannot afford fresh produce. Children are being fed lunch leftovers for breakfast. Schools run out of meal trays by mid-morning, and adults, city workers, elderly retirees. Bus drivers are quietly skipping meals so their families can eat first. Food banks run dry within hours. Lines wrap around blocks before dawn. The faces in those lines are not strangers. They are preschool teachers, postal clerks, janitors, people who serve the city every day, but are left to ration crackers and noodles at night. And while hunger creeps through these forgotten wards, upscale bistros just a few blocks west serve foie gras and imported wine meals that cost more than a sanitation worker earns in a week. When the nation's capital cannot guarantee food to the very people it governs, what does that say about the promise of America? The signs still say, "No one left behind," but the silence in these neighborhoods suggests otherwise. Number 7. Louisiana. Have you ever tasted a meal that reminded you of everything your family used to be, only to realize it's been reduced to white rice and salt? In southern Louisiana, deep in the wetlands that once gave birth to Creole cuisine, dinner tables are quiet. The pot of gumbo that used to simmer for hours is gone. The smoky jambalaya, the stews, the seafood platters gone. Not because the recipes were forgotten, but because the ingredients are. In 2025, much of rural Louisiana will become a patchwork of food deserts. As gas prices soared and supply chains narrowed,
spotlight are there
large
hidden
supermarkets
corners that have
pulled out
never
of
been
remote
revealed.
parishes,
Let's seek the
citing
answers.
unprofitability. Without reliable transport, small-town grocers are left with sparse shelves and inflated prices. The result, a population that knows how to cook, knows how to make a feast out of scraps, but now has nothing to start with. 25% of children across the state regularly go hungry. Not in the way headlines depict famine, but in a slower, quieter way. They eat processed food that fills the stomach but starves the body. Instant noodles, frozen sausage, sweet tea instead of milk, iron deficiency, obesity, and fatigue walk hand in hand. A mother in Plaquemines Parish says she no longer thinks in terms of nutrition, she thinks in dollars. "I used to make red beans and rice with sausage," she says. "Now it's just rice and whatever's cheapest. Sometimes nothing." Her 8-year-old daughter prefers school meals, not because they taste better, but because at least they exist. Meanwhile, in upscale restaurants in New Orleans, chefs continue to craft gourmet takes on local classics, flown in from out of state or even overseas. Farm-to-table dinners, $120 per guest,
the journey
but
from
just an hour
darkness
away.
to light.
A family
Stevie
of 5
Wonder's
shares
story begins
cornbread
like a
made from
sad
store-brand mix, praying it lasts until next week's food stamp refill. Who decides what poor people eat? Not the parents. Not the community. Often not even the government. What's left is a market-driven diet. Warftest, shaped not by culture, but by cost and access. When salt becomes the seasoning of survival, it says something about whose voices get heard and whose get left behind. If a place like Louisiana, with its deep-rooted food traditions, can lose the right to choose what goes on its table, what does that mean for the rest of us? Number 8. West Virginia. Have you ever passed a quiet mountain town and wondered what's left when its purpose disappears? And no one comes back to check West Virginia once the engine room of America's rise. The coal dug from these Appalachian hills powered factories, lit cities, and heated homes across the nation. But in 2025, that same land watches its elders collapse from exhaustion and its children skip school to help buy dinner. With coal in decline, entire communities have vanished from the map of opportunity. The state now ranks second to last in median income nationwide. Grocery stores in small towns have shuttered. What's left are gas stations with overpriced snacks and dollar stores that sell food barely worthy of the word. Public transportation is nearly non-existent.
Yet from those very somber notes, he created a radiant symphony that has lasted.
Run out before noon. And in the most painful scenes, too ordinary now to shock residents quietly search behind supermarket dumpsters, hoping for something not yet spoiled. Moldy bread, bruised fruit, unopened cartons of expired yogurt. Dignity gives way to necessity. They take what they can carry home, not with pride, but with the silent knowledge that tomorrow might offer even less. A 71-year-old former coal worker in Logan County sits on his porch, holding a single slice of white bread. "I gave my body to this country," he says. "Now I give half my meal to my granddaughter." Because her school stopped serving second lunches, he does not ask for pity, just for a little recognition. That's the true hunger here, not only in the belly, but in the spirit. There are towns where the only hot meal comes from a school cafeteria, where teenagers drop out to wash dishes at the only open diner, where no one dreams of college anymore because everyone's just trying to make it to next week. It is not just food that's missing. It's momentum. It's belief. It's the sense that someone, somewhere, still sees you. Meanwhile, in Washington, new programs are announced. Billions pledged to foreign aid and innovation. But in the hollowed valleys of McDowell County, people are still boiling instant noodles for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Not because they love it, but because it's the only warm thing they can afford to offer their kids. West Virginia doesn't want handouts. It wants memory. It wants its contributions to be remembered
for
not just on Veterans Day or Labor Day
Stevland Hardaway
speeches,
Judkins,
but in actual
later
policies,
changed to Stevland Hardaway
in actual
Morris.
plates of food. The question isn't whether this region is worth saving. The question is, how long will it be ignored before another generation forgets what it's like to eat without worry? As we leave the shadow of these mountains, one thought lingers heavier than the coal once did if the places that built America are now starving quietly. How much of the country's foundation is already crumbling beneath our feet? Number 9, New Mexico. Can you imagine a childhood where dinner is one apple split 3 ways in New Mexico's sun-drenched deserts, far from the headlines and spotlights? That's reality for too many families, especially among indigenous communities, where hunger is not just a moment, it's a condition passed down like an heirloom. The rates of food insecurity for Native American households in this state are more than double the national average. But the silence surrounding their struggle is even deeper than the hunger. The causes are not new. They are layered, historical, and systematic. Choked infrastructure, vanished markets, disintegrating support systems. Traditional food centers
was
shut
born
down
on May
one
13,
by one.
1950, in the city of Saginaw, Michigan.
Cars, too expensive for those without stable jobs. Grocery trucks now replace gathering circles. Processed, packaged foods take the place of ancestral staples like cornmeal and squash. A pregnant Navajo woman in northern New Mexico says she eats dry bread 3 times a day, not because she wants to, because it's all she has. "I used to make stew like my grandmother," she tells us. "But now I don't even have potatoes." Meanwhile, nutritional clinics are overwhelmed, understaffed, and underfunded. Some expectant mothers travel over 2 hours for basic prenatal supplements. Children in these communities are shrinking not just in height, but in spirit. Stunted growth, anemia, trouble concentrating in school. These are the daily realities for thousands of indigenous kids who never chose to be born into this cycle, but are made to carry its burden. In one village near Gallup, a grandmother tears up as she slices a single apple into thirds for dinner. "I tell them it's sweet so they'll eat it slow," she whispers. She doesn't mention that it's the only fruit they'll have all week. This is what food insecurity looks like when wrapped in silence, when poverty is woven into cultural erasure, when people once stewards of the land are now dependent on outside delivery trucks for basic sustenance. It is not just hunger, it is humiliation by design.
In USA,
Yet while this unfolds,
he arrived 6 weeks premature.
State funding cuts deepen. School lunch programs shrink. Federal relief programs are delayed or bypass tribal lands altogether. And in the cities, grocery stores brim with choices. Farmers markets sell organic apples at $3 each, and nutrition is a lifestyle. The inequality does not scream. It settles like desert dust everywhere, unnoticed. And suffocating. Who decides which communities are worth feeding? Who chooses which children grow strong and which get smaller each year? New Mexico's indigenous people don't want pity. They want presence, investment, consistency. They want to raise their children on the same land they've loved for generations without worrying if that land can feed them. We often talk about protecting heritage, but heritage cannot survive when its people are hungry. No culture thrives on an empty stomach, and no nation can claim greatness while turning its back on the very communities it once took everything from. As we cross the arid roads of New Mexico and head toward our next stop, one truth becomes unavoidable. If the first peoples of this country still cannot eat in peace, how much progress have we really made? Number 10, Alaska. Have you ever held a dozen eggs and wondered if they were worth more than the gas in your tank? In Alaska? And that's not a metaphor, it's the daily math of survival. In remote villages where winter lasts up to 8 months, a single carton of eggs
and as
can
a
cost
consequence,
$12.
he developed a condition
For many families,
known as retinopathy
that's a luxury
of
they cannot
prematurity.
afford.
Immediately
And when
after
the plane
birth,
doesn't land or the boat doesn't dock on time, dinner doesn't happen. It is that simple. That was brutal. This is not a story of scarcity. It is a story of isolation. In Alaska, nearly 40% of all food costs are tied to transportation. Groceries are flown in, shipped in, trucked in from the lower 48. One storm can delay deliveries for days. One fuel hike can push an already fragile household into hunger. And as climate events grow more extreme, delays are no longer rare. They are constant. Entire communities are forced to ration. A school cook in the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta says she's had to serve expired canned beans 3 times in 1 week, not because she wants to, but because there was nothing else. We stretch what we can, she says, and we hide the labels from the kids. In theory, Alaska has a history of self-reliance. Native communities have hunted, fished, and foraged for centuries. But in 2025, that way of life is being legislated out of existence. Hunting restrictions and land use policies have tightened. Subsistence rights are tangled in bureaucracy. In some cases, indigenous families must apply for permits just to catch salmon in waters their ancestors once called home. One Inupiaq elder near Nome shared this. We're told to wait for the shipment.
He was placed
but the river
in an incubator
never waited.
with a high oxygen
the
level
caribou
to
never
save his
waited.
life. But the
We
very
used to
thing
live
that
off this
saved him
land.
also
Now,
took away the light from
we
his
live
eyes.
off whatever's left in the freezer. And those freezers, they're going empty faster than ever. The result is a cruel paradox. The people best equipped to live off the land are legally restricted from doing so. Meanwhile, store shelves empty when the skies freeze. And families, especially the elderly, endure a hunger that no relief package seems to understand. There's no Uber Eats here, no last-minute grocery runs. In some villages, the nearest market is 100 miles away and the road doesn't even stay open year-round. A simple dinner becomes a matter of geography, fuel prices, and weather forecasts. So what does independence mean when a family can't feed itself? What does it mean when the cost of survival is so high? The government advises stocking up for weeks, knowing full well most families can't. A flag can't keep you warm. And a slogan about freedom doesn't fill a child's stomach. If you once believed that living far from Washington didn't make you any less American. If your community once shared moose meat like treasure and helped one another through the storm. And if today, you find yourself shivering beside empty cupboards, wondering if anyone even remembers your zip code, you are not alone, because the American dream should not depend on how close you live to a shipping port, and the right to eat should not vanish with the snow. Each state in this list is not just a location, it's a warning. These are not faraway lands or struggling nations. This is the United States. And yes, people here are going hungry, not because food has vanished, but because it can no longer reach those who need it most. The shelves are still stocked somewhere. The fields are still green somewhere, but in more and more corners of this country, dinner is becoming a question without an answer. The American dinner table, the symbol of comfort, of family, of dignity is quietly disappearing for millions. And if this trend continues, what kind of future are we heading toward? Food insecurity is not just about empty stomachs. It is about broken systems, invisible barriers, silent inequalities. It is about children going to school hungry and elders skipping meals so their grandchildren can eat first. It is about the slow erosion of what it means to live with dignity. You may not see it on your block, but it's happening in the next town, in your state, maybe even in the house next door. So tell us, where are you watching from? What is the situation? Like where you live? Are the stores still full? Are prices rising beyond reach? Are families around you beginning to choose between food and fuel? Your voice matters. Your story might be the voice of millions who no longer have the strength or the platform to speak up, because hunger doesn't shout. It whispers. And right now, it is whispering across America.